This is Grandmaster Boris Alterman and you're watching Gambit Guide. E4, D5 is a new series of lecture about the Scandinavian defense, and I would like to share with you that after knight c3 and queen a5, it's quite interesting gambit line discovered more than 100 years ago, b2 and b4 move. So instead of after knight c3, queen a5 and d4 or bishop c4, so white could just go quite aggressively with this b2 b4 move, threatening the black's queen but at the same time sacrificing a pawn. So this gambit line, I already found some sources which are saying that the game with b4 played already more than 100 years ago, and I found just in simultaneous exhibitions that even second world champion Emanuel Lasker used to play b4. So after queen takes b4, which of course we will call as the main variation when black is accepting the pawn sacrifice and trying to keep the material advantage. Just before, I would like to show you what would happen in case black is not accepting the sacrifice, because sometimes when you surprise your opponent, it happens quite often that your opponent is trying just to avoid much complication and just to play some sideline. So let's say queen b6. White continued developing his bishop to c4. Knight f6. h3. Knight c6. Rook b1. And here, when black just made bishop f5, knight f3 and e6, trying to continue development of all his pieces, suddenly this move is losing immediately, because white could just trap black's queen in just one move. So can you find it? So the cramped position of the queen on b6 just helps white to decide the game immediately after knight to a4. So you can simply realize that black's queen has no escape from b6. So white just wins immediately here. In case after b4, when black is playing queen e5 check, it also leads to the situation when white, by playing bishop e2, knight f6 and knight f3, just gaining a lot of additional tempi for getting the serious development advantage. Queen f5, short castling, queen g6, d4, e6, and here suddenly, after just one move, black has to call it a day. Can you find this move? Once again, the black's queen just got in the very bad situation. So it's once again it's trapped. So white has quite obvious move knight e5, but in that case black still could move his queen to f5. However, we have much better way. It's just to play knight to h4 and black's queen is lost. So you can see that black's queen cannot go here because bishop cannot go to h6, since our bishop from c1 is attacking this square. So, and just also cannot go not to f5, not to e4, because all the squares near the queen just simply controlled by all white pieces. Later on, we once again back to this line when black is just not accepting the sacrifice of the pawn. However, first of all, let's back to the situations when black is choosing just to capture the pawn and to get the material advantage. b4. So the game between the ruler and Di Mello from Agostini Memorial from 2005 continues queen takes b4, rook b1, and black played queen d6. So white simply continued developing his pieces, knight f3. So you ask, what for we sacrifice the pawn? So the temporarily black has to look after his b7 pawn. In case of e6, his bishop on c8 is quite passive. At the same time, white can operate over the b file and could use the b file for lifting his rook through via b3 or b5 to the center or to the king side. So in many variations, this maneuver with rook b3 and just then moving the rook into the king side and just to support white's attack on the king side is very important and very useful. So white is having better development and just price 1 pawn. In many situations we just cannot feel it. So despite the fact black is having some material advantage, it's just quite difficult to prove it at once. Also quite difficult for black to exchange some pieces or pawns in this structure. So white would get more control over the center. So after knight f3, knight f6 and d4, so black made the most typical mistake in such a situation and moved his bishop to g4, completely forgotten about the b7 pawn. So by playing rook takes b7 already, black is getting into the very big problem. Since after knight d7 or knight c6 and knight b5, here's almost nothing could stop white from capturing the pawn on c7. So black is in very, very difficult position. For instance, after queen e6 check and bishop e2, when knight d5 could be met also by c4, and also white can just simply capture the pawn on c7, as well as we can just great development all our pieces in the game. So black is a very big trouble. So Emanuel Lasker played in simultaneous exhibition in the United States in almost 100 years ago in 1905. Queen takes b4, rook b1, queen d4. So better of course to play queen d6 immediately, knight f3, so white is gaining one more tempo and black finally moved his queen to d8. So white is having 3 pieces already in the game, 2 knights and rook. So now Lasker just brings 1 more piece in the game, bishop a3, g6, bishop c4. So all the pieces are coming into the fight, bishop g7, knight e4, c6, queen e2, the first difficult sign for black. So white is threatening knight d6 check and then capturing the pawn on f7 later on. King f8 necessary, but now Lasker came with the interesting combination. So he sacrificed 1 piece on f7, bishop takes f7, king takes f7. Yeah, but what would be the next move? Now he came with second sacrifice, another sacrifice. Rook takes to b7, bishop takes b7, and played knight f to g5, king e8, knight e6 check. So suddenly black is in very big trouble. White is having rook and the piece down, but after queen takes d6, bishop takes d6, white is just getting back some material, and after king d7 and knight takes b7, black is also in quite serious problem. Let's say after queen c7, we just give a check, king goes to e8, check, king d7, knight c5 check, king goes to c8. Now we even could capture on g7, threatening also queen f8, also threatening queen takes h8. So suddenly white is gaining now the material advantage. If black is playing king d8, then of course knight e6, fork, and the game is over. And if king d6, then queen to e6, and this is a checkmate. So of course this combination is not so standard for the b4 gambit in the Scandinavian defense, but it once again showing just how dangerous could be threats against black's position immediately in the opening, so when we have just so huge development advantage. With the next game I would like just to show you the main and just quite important ideas. b4, queen takes b4, rook b1, and queen d6. So white is not always trying just to set the main target, the b7 pawn, as I said, but continue developing his pieces. Knight f3, c6. So later on we will be more familiar with the main idea of Scandinavian defense and with the Scandinavian gambit with b4, and I will show you that the best plan for white is just to follow the next setup when white is just moving the pawn to d4 and the bishop is coming to d3, looking towards the h7 square, where white is having just a lot of opportunity to create the serious attack against black kingside position. However, another plan is bishop c4 is a very standard one. Knight f6 and short castling. So definitely when black is moving his bishop out after bishop f5, we are simply capturing b7, getting just huge advantage. If black is moving his pawn to e6, so white after d4, bishop e7, and queen e2 or rook e1, just keeping more space. So black bishop on c8 is locked, so white is having quite significant compensation for his sacrificed pawn. So in such a setup, as I said before, the bishop is better, would be posted on d3 and not on c4. And that plan happened in the game between Brad Walker and Ron Kelly in the Open Tournament in 1994. So when I would like just to show you how white could create such a strong attack on the king side by moving his bishop to d3. So you can see that when black is moving his pawn to e6, bishop basically has nothing to do on c4 because the f7 pawn just cannot be touched anymore. So the diagonal is in general is blocked. So that's why in this position, instead of moving the bishop to c4, much better to play bishop to d3, as I explained before. So now we will see the reason. Black cannot move his bishop from c8 and he forced to play e6 in order to complete the development of the king side, castling short side, bishop e7, rook e1. So white is still having a pawn down. However, it just will take for black a while to finish development of all his pieces and to prepare trading, and only then maybe black can go into the end game and hope to realize his material advantage. But it's not end game yet, so we are still in the middle game, just still only finish the development. White is having all his pieces centralized, so white is controlling more space. It's controlling e5 square, controlling e4, d4. On d5 is also not such a great control black has. So, but the outstanding control over the e5 just brings white additional advantages, and we will see how white can continue attack on the king side thanks to great control over the center. Short castling, knight e5, queen c7, and white is bringing now one more piece into the game, bishop to g5. So we already looking for different combination with the bishop takes h7 idea. So after bishop takes f6 and bishop takes h7. For instance, when black is playing in such a situation, knight d5, after knight takes d5, c takes d5, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, we already could consider quite seriously the idea of bishop takes h7. Look at that. Check. Queen h5 check. And now brings the rook into the game. So, as I explained before, the rook from b1 could be lifted very soon to support our attack on the king side. So how black could stop now? Rook h3. It's already very difficult. For instance, after g6 and queen h6, when black is trying to play queen f6, we just simply move the rook to h3, threatening queen h7. Or, what is also quite interesting way in such a situation, just to sacrifice on g6. Knight take g6. When queen take g6 will be made by rook g3. However, black could answer f take g6, and with a threat to activate his queen as well with a counterattack. However, after the sacrifice takes on g6 and queen goes to h5 somewhere, there is extremely difficult to stop rook g3. So white is having very strong attack on the king side. So look what happened in the game. So after g6, of course, we are, as I explained before, not queen h6. Possible knight take g6, but much better is just what happened. Rook to g3. And black just already can stop the capturing on g6 with a decisive checkmate in attack. Let's say knight d7 will be met by knight take g6. And the mate is coming. Here rook h3 over. Queen f6 already doesn't help anymore. Knight take g6 and rook take g6. White is just winning immediately. So the only opportunity for black here to protect his position is just to play queen f6. However, after rook to h3, queen h6, queen d1, queen f6, and white is just bringing one more piece into the game. Black's position is extremely difficult. So we are threatening to bring the other rook to f3. We are intending once again queen h5. White has all his pieces looking towards the black's king side. For instance, after knight c6 and rook f3, white is just almost finishing the game. Let's say queen e7 will be met by the nice combination. Can you find it? So once again we are using the power of heavy pieces. So rook h8 sacrificing. Second sacrifice of the rook, and now queen came to h5 and black is just hopeless against queen h8, and this is a checkmate. So let's back to the starting point of combination. Before white played bishop takes h7. So it's also possible just to prepare and to play first rook b3. So now I'm intending bishop takes h7. For black it was absolutely necessary to lock the diagonal by playing f5, but in that case of course white would get just great outpost for the knight on e5. However, the position is still not so clear. But after knight c6 and bishop takes h7, so black's position just immediately ruined. Black's king side is just too exposed after queen h5 check, king g8 and rook h3. So once again we can see this very nice lift for the rooks from the b3 to h3, and black is absolutely hopeless against the queen h8 or queen h7 with a checkmate. So what we studied here, that the bishop, white's light square bishop, should be developed to the d3 square, looking towards the black's king side. So I'd like to show you one more game for the same ideas. Knight c3, queen a5, b4, queen takes b4, rook b1, queen d6, so this is already almost a tabby, eh? So d4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, bishop d3. Black cannot develop the bishop, as we know, to g4 because rook takes b7 simply. So e6 necessary, short castling, knight bd7. So black is just trying to fight for e5 square, not allowing white to bring his knight there. Rook e1, bishop e7, and now very nice move. So once again, white is just already looking forward for the kingside attack, and he brings his rook to b3. Just multi-idea. First of all, black cannot play maybe immediately short castling because it's allowing white to bring one more piece in the game after bishop a3 attacking the queen on d6. So black is just trying to avoid any complication by playing queen c7, but this just gives white time for continue pressing on the king side after knight e5. Short castling. Now we change the direction for our bishop, so we complete the full development of all white pieces by bishop g5. So also bishop is just very aggressive here on g5. It's also pins the knight on f6, so knight cannot move anymore. c5. Black is trying hard to open up a position. Knight e4. As I said before, so knight is pinned, so black cannot capture on e4. So he decided just to capture first on e5, with idea that after d takes e5 to recapture on e4. However, all white pieces were already looking towards the black's king side, and here it should be some combination. Let's try to find it. So once again, white is just totally demolishing black's kingside protection by the sacrificing of his minor pieces. Knight takes f6. So the pawn should take on f6 or bishop. After bishop takes f6, we just simply play bishop takes h7. King takes h7. So now the rook is ready to come into the game. Rook check. King g8, and after queen h5 there is nothing could stop once again the black's king from being mated after queen h8 or queen h7. So you can ask, okay, so bishop takes f6 cannot be played, but maybe I can save a day by playing g takes f6. So what would be your answer in that case? Bishop takes h7. So once again we sacrificing the bishop. King takes h7 will be met by queen h5, and the checkmate is coming. Same way. So after bishop takes h7, black played king g7. But it doesn't help black much. Bishop h6, sacrificing one more bishop. So for us it's very important to bring the rook to the king side with a check. So this would just bring white just decisive attack, because after, let's say, king takes h6, rook h3 check, king g7, and queen h5, almost nothing could stop from queen h6, and this will be the checkmate. So after bishop h6, king takes h7, white simply continue with d takes e5, getting rid of the last defender of the black's king side. So we are threatening to bring the queen to h5 with a decisive mating attack. I would like to draw your attention that rook from b3 is at any moment could join the attack. So black's position is just absolutely hopeless. For instance, black cannot capture. After king takes h6, white is just going to checkmate it. Check. And game is finished. Black played rook g8, trying to bring at least one piece in the defense. However, queen h5, rook g6, rook h3, king g8, only move. And so what is the final move now in this position? Bishop to g7. So freeing the file for white's pieces, and black just cannot stop the checkmate threat. After king takes, white is winning by queen h8, and this is a checkmate. In case of rook takes, once again queen h8, and this is a checkmate. So with these two important games, we studied that in b4 gambit variation in the Scandinavian defense, white is not just sacrificing a pawn for obtaining some temporal pressure over the b file, but it has also some strategic long-term ideas. So white is developing very interesting attack on the king side, thanks to the better development and opportunity to bring his heavy rook from b1 via b3 to the king side almost instantly. So the question if really this pawn sacrifice just allow white to organize such a strong attack. So we will consider it next week on the part 2 of the b4 gambit in the Scandinavian. If you have any question, you can leave me a message on ICC. See you next time.